Colorado Plateau. And this is such an amazing list. But roughly centered on the Four Corners region of the southwestern US, the Colorado Plateau is mainly composed of high desert lands that are home to 10 national parks. Our presenter, Steve Farrar, will recount stories of his travels in the area as he takes us on a tour of Red Rock Country, that includes a wide variety of amazing natural images, from fantastic rock formations to the iconic saguaro cactus, from expansive canyon vistas to soaring arches and tight slot canyons. And I'm particularly excited about Mesa Verde as well. It's one of the places I really hope to visit one day. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you, Steve.
All right, let's start on our journey. The first thing you're going to notice is that the Colorado Plateau is not exactly in Colorado. If we go all the way back to the map, you can see that there's a portion of it, but it is a high area, mainly centered in Utah. The desert country of Utah melds down into northern Arizona and New Mexico and over the Four Corners district. These are the list of the parks that we'll go to tonight, take virtual visits to. So without further ado, away we go. I am going to preface that not all of the pictures that I'm showing you, I started long ago visiting these parks, and you really wouldn't want to see my grainy 1970s era Kodak Instamatic shots blown up to a high resolution image. So I've replaced some of them with mainly sites from the national park websites, pictures of the parks. But if I'm in them, they're my pictures. There's quite a bit of Utah that's set aside for federal lands. As you can see, the yellow dots are national monuments, and the red ones, the 5 red ones across Utah, are the 5 national parks in Utah. So we'll start down in just outside of Vegas, in Zion National Park. Zion, I took my kids here one April vacation. They said, where are we going for spring break, Dad? I said, we're going to Vegas. And they were like, psyched. For about 2 minutes until we get our van, and then we're out of here. It's only a 3-hour drive from Vegas, and you get down there. The visitor center now is just inside the gates of the park. You used to be able to drive in there, but because the canyon is fairly closed in terms of air circulation, the smog was building up to an unacceptable point, and they've shut off personal car travel into there is a road, as you can see, the Virgin River that carved the canyon, and then there's a little area where they can put a road beside it, but personal vehicles are not allowed in the canyon anymore. You have to leave them at the big parking lot at the visitors center, like in the Grand Canyon, and then you hop on the electric shuttle buses to get up into the canyon to access places. Virgin River itself is not all that imposing. It's not a big rafting venture like the Colorado through the Grand Canyon or anything. It doesn't, at first blush, appear to be capable of carving what you're going to see as a canyon, but in reality, the high country of the Colorado Plateau, the northern part of the park sits at 9,000 feet elevation and drops just through the park to down to 4,000. That means the river's traveling 80 feet per mile in sections, which doesn't sound all that much, but that's 10 times the rate of descent of the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. So when there's spring runoff, this place is rocking. Now, the first ones that come into an area get to name the place and the formations and stuff. And this was an area that nobody really could find any means of sustenance to live there, except the Mormons. Mormons came down, and they kind of liked the place. Zion means place of peace and relaxation. So the names that you're going to see, this is the court of the patriarchs. We have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. are the peaks that are there. You'll see several more similar names. The first hike, 2 of the top 5 hikes in all of the national parks are inside of Zion. The first one we're going to look at here is called the Narrows, and it's more of a wade than an actual hike. Water shoes are better than hiking shoes because you're up to your waist pretty much year round. Well, you can't go there in the spring or June because the water is too high. Through this aptly named section, the Narrows, you're talking 30-foot width and 2,000-foot sheer cliffs on either side. So it's pretty amazing. But what it does is mandate that anybody going on the Narrows trip, you have to check in with the rangers and go to the backcountry to get a permit, because they will take care of monitoring the storms. You may think you're fine where you are, but because of the lay of the land, if it's raining way up north that you may not even see the rain clouds from, that water is going to come down in a hurry, and there can be flash floods, as it says here back in 1954. The river, the walls, the 2,000-foot tall walls are smooth for a reason. It's because the water goes up like the contents of a thermometer. When the volume of water swells, the water goes way up in a hurry. And you can, there's quite a few people have drowned being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So to run a check on that, you can't enter the Narrows without a backcountry permit from the rangers. It's a rarity to find a view like this with the internet and the popularity of wild places. You're going to have company if you go on this. I mean, it's a popular trail to hike, but if you go at the right time, you can have sections of it to yourself. Get up very early. The lodge, one great bucket list would be to go around to the parks and stay at all the great lodges, because there are some beauties. This one built down back in 1925 really hasn't even changed much, other than the pictures are in color. They built it into the side. It's very unobtrusive. These are the electric trams that will pretty much, there are scheduled little stopping points along the way, but if you're in the road and you just throw your hand up, they'll stop and let you on. So you can get on and off pretty much wherever you want to. The river is snaked around. The map there is the trail coming around the backside to end up on the east rim of the park. When I was there in 1985, the one trail that I wanted to spend my day hiking was closed for the day because the Army Corps of Engineers were ferrying buckets of, by helicopter, buckets of concrete to shore up a path. So I couldn't hike it, so I had to go over to this east rim. I was doing this trip solo, and if you're going to do that, it's a good idea to check in with the rangers. I would get up at 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning and do a 5 or 6 hour hike in the mornings. But because I was on my own, I would tell the rangers where I was going and when I expected to be back, because on this trail in particular, I hiked for 5 hours, never saw another person. This was the 3rd week in April. So it's not the peak of the visitation period in the middle of the summer, but you know, if I turn my ankle or something bad happens, the cavalry's not coming. You're pretty much on your own. So I wanted them to know when I would be expected around lunchtime. And conversely, all the pictures that I have, I had to, this was pre-selfie stick era. So my little camera, I had to set the timer and then run around to get in the picture. That's a 3,000-foot drop that I'm balanced on the edge of at the top of the east rim. That's the view that I'm looking at, looking down the valley. This is heading south. So to the left is the east rim that I'm at the top of. That Stegosaurus spine in the right-hand side of the picture is actually, well, it's a 15-foot sheer cliff on this side, and it's the exact same on the other side. And that spine up the top actually is the hike that I wanted to do. It was called Angel's Landing. That's not for the faint of heart. That one's a, oops is not a good word on this hike. That's the trail that goes up the spine, and it's that sheer drop on either side. So as you can see, it says this route is not recommended during high winds. That's putting it mildly. People die on this trail if you're not being careful. So how do you get up a sheer 1,500-foot cliff? Well, you use the wiggles. Walter's Wiggles is a set of switchbacks that scale straight up the face of the thing. This is the trail that used to be just hard-packed clay, and this is what they were pouring the concrete in to solidify them in April of 1985 when I was there. Walter was the first Zion National Park superintendent, so they named it after him. He's the one that discovered the means of accessing the spine up at the top. There's a series of 21 of these switchbacks. So if you're at the top looking down, those people on the left are at the bottom of the switchbacks, and they're going back and forth. And it's basically like climbing a ladder for 1,500 feet to go straight up. And when you do get up the top, they do give a little bit of a handhold on the inside of the trail, but as you can see, they're not big on guardrails, so you're rather exposed to the drop off. There's a place called Scouts Landing where at the top of the Wiggles you can sit down. There's benches, and you can enjoy the view. On the way up, on this trip in particular, I had two of my three sons were with us, 8th grade and 10th grade at the time. And we had a friend of theirs. So there were 3 boys, and then my assistant scoutmaster. I was a scoutmaster at the time. So I took my assistant scoutmaster and his sons. So we had 3 boys and the 2 of us. Halfway up Walter's Wiggles, Steve, the other, my assistant scoutmaster, kept stopping, and I said, "What's the matter, Steve?" Because I knew he was in good physical shape. He chooses to tell me there that he's afraid of heights. I said, "Steve, didn't you see the sign down the bottom? This is not the hike for somebody afraid of heights." So when we got to Scouts Landing here, I left him and the packs there and the boys and said, "Well, I just want to go up to the top and get a shot from the top there." That didn't fly with the boys, and they wanted to come up, and it was day 1 of a 10-day trip, and this was our first hike, and ended up quite an argument. I said, "Guys, I didn't plan on you coming up. I didn't bring any harnesses. I didn't have any ropes." I said, this is not an easy place to hike." They go, "Well, you're going up there." "Yeah, but I'm going to be careful." "Oh, we'll be careful." So we went back and forth. They were fine. I let them come up, and this is the view from overlooking that sheer drop off face. This is my youngest son, Galen. Several years later, this is a couple of years ago, on his birthday, June 4th, on his birthday, he hiked Angel's Landing in the morning. So this is looking north. The sun's coming from in front of him, which is facing east. That's the view up to the north of the canyon. He hiked Angel's Landing in the morning and then hiked the Narrows in the afternoon. So that was his birthday present to himself, was hiking both of those trails. The roads are pretty much the same way. To get up out of the canyon to head out the eastern gate, that's the road that also has switchbacks and goes through a big tunnel carved in the rocks to get out of the canyon. But very, very spectacular park. The beauty of what we did is in a van trip. Now, mind you, there's 5 of us in a van, so there's 3 14-year-olds in the back seat, cheek to jowl. And the parks are maybe a couple hundred miles apart from each other. So they're a day's drive or hailing distance from each other. Bryce is right up the road. The second red dot there, Zion's in the lower left. The next one up the road is Bryce. Just to give you an idea of what it would cost if you're going on a trip, you can get a $25 vehicle pass, and then there's $12 per person. I happen to be over 62, so I have my senior pass, and it's good for not only the driver of the vehicle, but everybody in there. So I would very highly recommend, if you're going to do multiple parks, that you get one of these passes. Bryce Canyon runs north to south, and this one's a little different. This is the top end of the Colorado Plateau. So the northernmost section is the low section. There's another couple of Mormons, Ebenezer and Mary Bryce, named it. So it was named Bryce Canyon after them. It's only 5 miles wide, and north to south climbs from 6,000 foot elevation where the visitor center is up at the top. If you travel the red line, the rim drive to the southernmost point, you're actually climbing up to 9,000 feet. And as I say, it's not really a canyon. It's called Bryce Canyon. It's an amphitheater. And it is probably one of the more spectacular natural scenic vistas that you'll ever set eyes on. It reminds me of something that Walt Disney could have created if he had some pretty good drugs. He could have come up with an idea like this. I mean, it's just, there's no way that you can improve on what nature has provided for formations here. It's not wind erosion or weather erosion. It's actually from water seeping into cracks and then freezing and expanding, and it cracks the rocks and breaks them off. So these formations are called hoodoos. And what you want to do is make sure you set aside enough time to hike on them, because that's the only way to get a feel for the park, is to get down, hiking down into them. And they're pretty fantastic. There's a number of famous ones. This on the left is called Thor's Hammer. There's all kinds of names on a bunch of them, but it's getting in touch with that's what passes for a trail. It's basically where a lot of people have followed each other's footprints to get down there. There's the three boys going down Wall Street to get down to the bottom. And the texture of the rock is unlike anything that we have. I'm up in New Hampshire, so we're the granite state, and it's rock that's smooths out and is solid like Yosemite granite. This is not like that. This is basically compacted silt. It's sandstone and gritty, crumbles in your hands. It's not stuff that you would want to be climbing on. You get down there and there's all kinds of natural bridges. This is from the bottom. Looking around down there, the place looks very, very different when you're down amongst them. But the kids got to climb around on the formations and really get a feel for the park. Two different kinds of sandstone. Well, we'll get into those later, but this whole area at one point used to be the bottom of an inland sea. So the sediment that piled up on each other is 1,000 feet thick, and it gets all eroded. So the formations are very tall, but it's relatively soft stone. Driving along the top, which you can do as the amphitheater faces to the east. So as the sun goes over the noon part and towards the afternoon, you get very, very different interplay of sunlight and shadows. So as you drive along, you get very different views. As the sun starts to go down, it picks up all the different colors are different types of minerals. And the sun, you can sit in one spot and your view changes as the sun switches position. The orange is iron, blue, there's actually blue minerals, the manganese comes out, and it's absolutely spectacular. This is all the way at the end. Rainbow Point is the highest point at 9,100 feet. And what you're doing is looking back north, the length of the amphitheater from where you drove. Pretty wild place. The third one in the middle, plunk in the middle of Utah, is Capitol Reef. This was this summer, actually. I was there a couple weeks, months ago with all three of my boys. We went in July. As you can see, it's right in the middle, and it's very similar shape to Bryce Canyon, north to south, much longer. The Mormons, when they named it Capitol Reef, and what they did was they were coming in their covered wagons down from Illinois to the Chicago area, and they they were doing fine until they ran into this, basically a fold, a big wrinkle in the Colorado Plateau. We use the term reef usually in reference to a coral reef, but the term actually is defined as a barrier. A reef is a barrier. So around an island, the coral reef keeps the waves from crashing into the lagoon and stuff. It stops them. Well, this 100-mile-long water pocket fold, if you look from the air, this is looking south to north from the air, they're coming from the east, and they hit this wall, and 50 miles in either direction. How would you like to try to get a horse-drawn cart up and over that? There was no wall, no road traversing it until the 60s. So you literally couldn't get around it. These are the water pockets up on top where it gets eroded, and it does, they're like cisterns. They'll hold water. I wouldn't be in a big hurry unless you have a very good filter to, or are very, very thirsty to take part of it. But they hold water. Now, if you're a Mormon and you catch sight of rock formations like this, it reminds you of the U.S. Capitol building. If you're a French fur trader up in Wyoming, you call it the Grand Tetons. But to them, it's a capitol. So that's where the name of the park comes from, Capitol Reef. It reminded them of the dome, the Capitol building. Very rugged territory. Not one of the more visited places of all the parks because it's rugged. It's hard to get from point A to point B. There's only that one road that traverses it. And if you do go there, you have to, again, be careful of the weather. If storms are threatening, you don't go down there. It's called the Grand Wash for a reason. So there's my great white whale. My Moby was my white van, going down into the Grand Wash. They also have a trail called the Narrows for the exact same reason, and that's how you get to Cassidy Arch. It's a couple-mile hike. What I'm showing you is how close the walls are together to go around the corner and get to the bottom of the hike up to the arch. Butch Cassidy had his hideout up here, and for very good reason. I'll show you in a minute. But this arch, try as I might, I had a 25 or 30-second timer on my little camera. I was up here for over 2 hours and never saw another person. This was back in '85. I was 30 years old at the time in 1985. Quick math, it makes me 65 now. I couldn't run fast enough to get into the picture. No matter how many times I set the timer and ran to get around. That's how big that distance is across the chasm. But I mentioned I was here in July. That, my friends, is why you go to national parks. This is 35 years later, the exact same picture Number one, I'm very impressed that I can get back up here again 35 years later, but I was 30 years old when I was there. My three boys in the picture here are 29, 30, and 32 years old. So they're the same age now that I was when I first came here. And they're having the exact same experience that I had because nothing has changed. It's the exact same, very high wow factor. There's my son Brooks looking back at the arch over in the right-hand side. But this is what the trail is like to get up there. You climb it up these cliffs and scramble over rocks and stuff. And it was so much fun to see them having the absolute identical reaction that I had quite a few years ago. Great place to hike. This is the view from the top. This is why Butch Cassidy hung out up there, because you can see 50 miles in any direction. So the posse's not going to sneak up on them. And even if they did, they had to traverse through the narrows where one guy up on top with a rifle could hold off an army, because they had to virtually go single file through to get to the bottom of the trail. So it was a great place for a hideout. That just shows I climbed up in the little window there, that where the water, when it does rain, comes washing through the area and hollows out those formations. The northern part of the park has some pretty amazing natural formations. This is Cathedral Valley. Quite a hike to get out there, or if you have a four-wheel drive vehicle, you can drive fairly close to it. But these things look like, that this is a temple that you'd see down in Karnak somewhere over in Egypt, except nature carved this, not the ancient Egyptians. This is up at Sunset Point, the end of the day. And this is one of the dark sky parks. It's absolutely in the middle of nowhere, so there's no backlighting whatsoever from any man-made lights. So if you not only do you have the clarity of the high desert air, you have total lack of any man-made light. Those are not clouds. That's the Milky Way, and more stars than you ever thought we had. It's a pretty amazing place to camp out. On the eastern edge of Utah is Arches. Arches up at the upper of the two right-hand red dots there is just outside literally just outside the city limits of Moab, Utah. There's one road that bisects the park that you can drive. It's the most concentrated area of rock openings anywhere in the world. I'm not going to show you 2,000 pictures of different arches, but no two are alike. They're amazing, very accessible. You can see the people there in the middle of this one. 114 square miles is not all that large as national parks go, so they're pretty concentrated. This is an aerial view. There's the one road in the middle that bisects the park. It goes through the fiery furnace section. From above, you can see the fins that are forming. The reason that this area has arches is because, as I mentioned, it used to be the floor of an inland sea. Well, the water evaporated and left thousands of feet of salt, gypsum salt, underneath. Eventually, the sediments filled in and covered it over. Well, salts don't do well under pressure. So with the weight of the sediments, the salt reacts to it and heaves up in like a dome. And what it does is pushes up, and that leaves cracks in the sedimentary layer. So on your left, you'll see the layer with just thin cracks. And this is a sequence shot of how the arches form. Initially, they're narrow cracks. Water gets in, does its thing, widens the crack, and you end up with these freestanding fins. And then eventually, water and weather, wind, erode the softer sandstone, and the debris drops from underneath and leaves an arch. So the fiery furnace is incipient arches, basically. They have yet to form to that stage. So you'll see whole areas like this in the northern section of Arches Park, where you want to bring your compass because it's easy to get lost out there. But you have freestanding fins that someday will eventually be new arches. This is called the organ. You can see the car on the left to give you a size of the size scale of the fin that we're looking at. And they all have names. These are the three gossips, another big formation there and stuff. Skyline Arch, very, very accessible. They have, you can park nearby, and there's steps to get up to the arch. This is the longest arch. That's my middle son, Jake. 306 feet span is the longest arch in the park. The path used to go up underneath it, but in 1991 wasn't all that long ago. There luckily were not any people there, but the whole huge section, you can see the debris underneath, whole section of rock just let go and crashed down. So eventually this isn't going to be in it. If you want to see the longest arch, you got to go there pretty quick. I don't know how many geological time may be longer, but for now the trail doesn't go up underneath it anymore, lest more rocks fall from the underside. This is Double O Arch. There's one down below, and then you can climb up onto the one above it. You can see the white shirted person way in the right-hand side. He's actually down the road further, but it'll give you an idea. These are big formations. This was a favorite. The kids, those are my kids in the middle there, climbing up into Double Arch. So this was why Mom was uninvited from this trip. That's me sitting down below, and that's the proximity. Your parking area is not too far. You just walk through the sand and get to the base of Double Arch, but I'm down below. There's my son Galen, who was in the 8th grade at the time, however old you are then. He's about 110 feet up off the deck, free climbing without any climbing partner or anything. He just scrambled up there to where the arch is bending over, and he couldn't get up any higher because he's up at the top of the arch. I think to this day he has this as a wallpaper on his computer. He was pretty proud of getting up there, and he made it back down okay. But you can see the size of them. See all the people on the left one. This is a right across from Double Arch, another area where you can walk through, and it's just caves and arches, and it's good place to spend a whole day. They have their balance rock as well. This one, you can normally either take a raft trip down a river through some of the parks, or you can take the mule ride down the canyon and stuff, or take bikes. Not in Arches. The only way is to hike, and the sign says primitive trail. That's an understatement. There's not much in terms of trail markings at all, so you'd do well to bring as I mentioned before, a compass with you. This is one of the more popular, well, the most popular destination in the park. Right at the top, you can see the base of an arch. That's Delicate Arch. That's the symbol of Arches National Park. That's, if you go to Utah, that's what the arch is that you'll see on their license plate. It's Delicate Arch, but you never see the amphitheater that's at the base of it. So I was up there taking a picture of it. This is first thing in the morning. We're looking to the east. When I turn around, and where the devil did Galen get to? Well, there he is down on the right-hand side. He took off on a run down through the amphitheater and is down there. He ended up over underneath the arch itself. This is a more regular picture that you'll see of the arch, but what you don't get a feel for is the big amphitheater in front of it, or for that matter, the drop-off behind it. climbing around to the eastern side, this is sunset looking west. So you can see Delicate Arch, and it's a 1,000-foot drop off behind it. So you see all these people posing under the arch, and what you don't realize is, yikes, what's right behind them. Hard to take a bad picture in this neck of the woods. Not usually lit up at night. This was a special photographer occasion where they lit up the bottom of the amphitheater to shadow and show Delicate Arch at night. Same thing with Double Arch. As I said, there's nothing in New England that you can point to and say, yeah, it's cool. It's kind of like this. This is a very, very different area of the world. And the fifth of the Utah parks is Canyonlands. Canyonlands is, well, just south of Arches. It's at the confluence of the Green River coming down from Dinosaur National Monument. Green River and the river to the right coming down out of Colorado is in fact the Colorado River. So the two rivers form Island in the Sky. There's 3 sections in Canyonlands. The Colorado and the Green come together, carve 2 canyons, and where they join and form the stem of the Y there, they divide the western side, the Maze, and the eastern side, the Needles. So you got Island in the Sky floating up above, and then the 2 eastern western sides form the 3 sections of Canyonlands. Grandview Point, this is the end of the road up above at the Island in the Sky, and you've got 100-mile vistas. This is not the Grand Canyon. This is in Canyonlands. You're 2,200 vertical feet up off of the water, and on a clear day, a 100-mile view is easy. The single most photographed sunrise picture, pretty much there are a lot of good ones. Acadia has some good ones with the first rays of the sun hitting the US and stuff. But this one here, this is called Mesa Arch. And that's my son Brooks in the green shirt setting up to get the sunrise. You have to get up early because you're going to have company. There are a lot of photographers, as I say, jockeying for position, because what happens is when the sun comes up, it lights up the underside of the arch. And to get the rays of the sun and stuff, you have to be in the right place at the right time to get the perfect shot. But this is what they're looking for. And the evolution of it, I mean, within minutes, when that comes up, you gotta be ready with the right speed film and everything else to get your shot. But see how the underside lights up? Now my son Galen has already had that shot. He got that when he was there last summer. So this summer he wanted to get, well, I can't blow this up, but it's about 3/4 of a mile around the rim to the right-hand side to get up to the top of the formation in the middle of the picture. If you look up at the top, there's a little dot. That's my son Galen. He's up at the top taking this picture, looking back at Mesa Arch at sunrise, and that's the fall away behind the arch. So if you don't mind running around at 8,000 or 9,000 feet elevation, you can get some pretty, and you're a good rock climber, you can get some pretty amazing pictures in Canyonlands. That's Mesa Arch again. Up in the same section in Island in the Sky, there's a big dome up there that nobody really knows whether it's a meteor crater, an impact crater, or whether it's one of the salt domes that just upheaved or whatever. It's about a 2-mile hike to get out to it. This is the White Rim Road. This is halfway down between the Island in the Sky mesa top and the rivers down below. About halfway down is a rim they discovered uranium in the area. And this was back in the 30s. And the prospectors hacked a barely passable road to get a means of getting the ore out. It's called Schaefer Trail Road, and that's the switchbacks that go from the top 2,200 vertical feet all the way down to the river. There's Brooks and Galen, my two boys, that decided in 105-degree heat that, yeah, we can bike that. At least they had gravity going down. I dropped them off at the top, and they got to go down that set of. This is the trail that they just rode their bikes down. Pretty amazing. You don't have to go up and down. You can just travel along the top, and this is the scenery you have all alongside you as you. This is biker heaven. It's mountain biking mecca for people. Come from all over the world to Moab for trail rides like this. But and if you're up for more adrenaline, when the Green and the Colorado River come together, the volume swells, and that 14-mile section right underneath Island in the Sky is called Cataract Canyon. And this is some serious whitewater. This isn't beginner stuff. You can go for multi-day raft trips down through there. So the left-hand, the western side, the Mesa District, I've never actually talked to anybody that's been over there. The only access is from way, way, way further to the west. It's a 46-mile road to get into it, and you better have four-wheel drive and very high clearance to navigate that road. But when you get in there, this is that's an overhead view of why it's called the Mesa District. If you want to feel like a rat sniffing out a piece of cheese, I mean, you can hike for hours and then come to a dead end and have to retrace your steps and go a different way and stuff. I don't see the attraction. I've never gone over there. To me, I stay over on the east side. The Needles District is much more civil. Very, very accessible. You can take commercial tours and let the professional drivers make sure your seatbelt's buckled, and they'll bring you right up. They're pretty good. Or you can rent one and try it yourself, but you gotta know what you're doing if you're gonna try that. This was back in '85 when I hiked out there. This was third week in April, and again, you're at elevation, so I'm in long sleeves and pants and gloves, hiking out into the Needles District. I camped out there, and you come across what I'm pointing to with my hiking staff are petroglyphs, ancient Anasazi carved eons ago. Fat Man's Misery, the trail. And again, that glow in the back is probably the town of Moab, but from down in the Needles District, just a spectacular nighttime display. If you want solitude, this is a good place for you. Now over the corner, so those are the 5 parks in Utah. If you go over the corner, you can see Canyonlands there. Just around the corner, heading towards Durango, is Mesa Verde. It's this one also has a 23-mile access road to get up into where the dwellings are, and you're climbing. Cortez, the town of Cortez, is the closest town. That's at 6,000 feet. Cliff Palace is just under 9,000. It's up at 8,500. Discovered by some guys that were looking for some lost cows. And this is a geographical map of the place, and you can see why there's only one road in the park, because lateral going east to west, there's no connectors. There's no way to build a road. So on top of the mesa for years, they, the, I think ancient Pueblans is the correct, politically correct term now. It used to be Anasazi, ancient Anasazis. Now they call them ancient Pueblans. They lived up on top of the mesa, and for 600 years they built all these dwellings with out of mud. Basically, it was the only building blocks they had. And then all of a sudden, they just decided to vacate the top of the mesa, and they built halfway down. They carved into the side of the cliffs these dwellings. There's all kinds of speculation as to why, for protection or whatever, but they spent a lot of time building, as you'll see, these cliff dwellings, and then within 100 years, the entire civilization just vanished. They just disappeared from the region. So the parking area, you can see up on the top there where the bus and the cars are, you have to drop down a couple hundred feet down a stairway to get to the base, and then climb up the ladder here 32 feet up to get into the adobe cliffs. 40 rooms is considered Metz a Metz. It's a medium-sized dwelling. 40 rooms people lived here. And basically what you're doing is looking across at the next mesa. They're all like fingers that run the length of them. The big one is Cliff Palace. That's the 150 rooms built into the side. It's a 400-foot thick layer of sandstone, and the same thing, you have to come down the stainless steel stairwell. They have tours where you can walk over and go right inside the dwellings, and those are the circular holes are called kivas. That's where the ancient Anasazis used to go down. The medicine men would go have their peyote buttons or smoke their peace pipes and stuff. That's the shape of them, and the roof support on the right used to have beams running across, straight across, to hold up the roof like that. They've rebuilt one up on the top to show you, but the logs have since deteriorated, and they're all open like that. That's me with a couple of the boys back in school age, where we could go down into the kivas, and it's a pretty thorough ranger-led tour down there. As you come up the park, there's one fork. There's only two roads. You come up from the visitor center, and either you go to the west to see the longhouse, or you go to the right to see Balcony House and Cliff Palace. Same thing. You got to go down the steps. This is the western side over to the longhouse. 150 feet down from where you parked, you got to go down, and very, very similar tour to the Cliff Palace. But they put a lot of effort into building this place, and then within 100 years, they just vacated. They left. The buildings face west, so all afternoon they're being warmed by the afternoon sun pointing directly into them. And then on special occasions, they'll put lighting down into the kivas to get shots like this, like a New Year's celebration or something. Pretty unique. There's my youngest son, Galen, with a foot and a hand in each of the four states that meet. It's the only place in the U.S. where there's 4 states that come together. Before taking them out there, again, they were in grade school, so I had showed them some John Wayne movies that were filmed in Monument Valley to give them an idea of what the place would look like, where we were going for vacation. And they just automatically assumed that those backdrops in the movies, the sets were phony. They were just hand drawn. So this is the picture we took. These are called the mitten formations. This is from the visitor center at the Monument Valley is on a Navajo reservation, so you have to pay the Navajos a fee to go down into Monument Valley. But I said, look, I had shown them during the movies, the formations, and here we are standing at the visitor center saying, there they are. You know, it wasn't a phony backdrop. That's what it looks like. So if you drop down from Monument Valley near the Four Corners there, straight down, you get to the Petrified Forest. Probably one of the easiest to access parks. It's actually got two entrances off of two different interstates. If you're going the southern route, traveling across the country, Route 40 is the access, and there's an exit for the northern section of Petrified Forest is known as the Painted Desert, and the more formations down off of 180 are where you'll find more petrified rocks. They are rocks, but at one point they were organic. They were logs. And there are other places. There's some up in the northern Minnesota range. The iron ore range has some. There's a concentration over in Poland. But this is the largest concentration of petrified wood found anywhere on Earth. The way it formed is, if you remember the pictures you may have seen of Mount St. Helens, when that blew, all of the forests that the percussion shock or the heat shock completely splintered them and laid them like toothpicks all over the mountain, at the base of the volcano. That's what happened here, is when a volcano erupted, all of these trees were knocked down, and then with the subsequent mud flow, they were all jammed up. They all flew like a river of mud came, and they were all jumbled up. But then hundreds of feet of ash came down, and between the mud and the ash, they settled on top of the wood and essentially covered it up. They blanketed it, and that slowed the exchange of oxygen because they had a blanket over them, slowed the decay, and slowly the water would seep down through, and molecule by molecule, the water would seep into the trunk of a tree and deposit a little mineral and take away a little organic carbon matter until all of the organic matter was replaced exactly the same as it was. You can still count the rings on what used to be a tree, but it's solid rock now. It's solid mineral. It's pretty unique. These guys aren't looking at bugs. It's a geology field trip, and this is what they're looking at up close and personal. You can see all the different colors of the minerals that have been exchanged, and it's really quite beautiful to look at, if you like geology, I guess. The biggest challenge for the rangers here is the fact that you're not supposed to take anything from a national park except pictures. Petrified wood, because there's so much of it just lying around, it's kind of hard to resist. Oh, they won't miss one little piece here and stuff. Well, they get almost 1 million visitors a year in Petrified Forest National Park. So that's a lot of little pieces picked up and thrown in a backpack. But you don't have to do. There's petrified wood found outside the borders of the park that you can stop at roadside retail stores and buy a souvenir if you want. You don't have to try to steal it from the park. But they estimate over 12 tons of petrified wood gets stolen every year from the park. So they don't take the big ones like you're looking at here, but little by little, all the smaller pieces just seem to disappear. That's a problem. Some of the early pictures are fun of cavalrymen with their horses on top of the logs. I mean, this one's 60 feet long. The longest is 120 feet long. So they have their newspaper rock from the early petroglyphs carved into it. This was an enterprising soul that chose to live there, and there's not any wood to build a house out of, so he compiled a whole house full of, he patched it together with mud and adobe, and it's a cabin made out of petrified wood from long ago. It's kind of a boring hike, actually. It reminds you of the Badlands up in South Dakota. Um, it's stark. It's very hot if you go in the summer. It averages around 100 degrees. There's not a lot to see other than the pieces of petrified wood. It's kind of a desolate area. Up in the Painted Desert in the northern section, at least you have colorations. There's different minerals. And again, as the sun changes position, it picks up different colors and different minerals and stuff. They call it the Painted Desert for a reason. It's beautiful. One of the great old inns. You can stay here. They have a deck out on the back looking out into the Painted Desert. So tremendous place for an afternoon adult beverage or two to as the sun's setting, to watch the changing shadows and stuff dance across the Painted Desert. And that brings us to our last of tonight's parks, the Grand Canyon. Teddy visited some pretty cool places, but this is, when he stood on the side here, he had to admit this was the most spectacular scenery he'd ever set eyes on. From above, it's basically a snaking river carved down into, it ranges from 4 miles wide to 13 miles across. From the top of the rim down to the canyon bottom where the river is 6,000 vertical feet. And north to south, it runs 277 miles long. So it's not just one scenic vista, it's a long formation. The watchtower on the south rim is a pretty cool structure that was designed by Mary Coulter, the inside of which is all decorated with American Indian artifacts, their furniture and carvings. You don't have to hike down there to be impacted by this. There's a lot of different views. There's a trail that goes all along the south rim that's pretty spectacular. You can see all the people there gathering. It's a very unforgettable view. You set eyes on it and you just, doesn't matter how many pictures you've looked at to get a sense of it. When you stand there and see it in person, just the overwhelming magnitude of the scale of the thing is pretty hard to swallow. So there's the shuttle buses here. As I mentioned, there's the Grand Canyon Village. You have to leave your personal vehicles there, and then there's shuttle buses all along, and they'll drop you. Or you can walk. That dotted line is the South Rim Trail. One of the other magnificent places to stay is called El Tovar. Was built 1905, sits right on the edge of the canyon rim. That's the entryway to the registration area. How'd you like to have your dinner with looking out out the window at sunset on the Grand Canyon? Pretty amazing place. So these are the these are the electric buses. We had tried for, unfortunately, you can make reservations up to 2 years in advance. There's very, very few campsites down at the bottom. There's Phantom Ranch, where you can reserve a made bed. If you want to take the mule ride down and stay and have breakfast served to you in the dining room at Phantom Ranch, you can stay in comfort. There's maybe a dozen campsites along Bright Angel Creek, and they're very hard to get. 9 months before we were hiking here, I tried and tried and tried because I wanted to hike down the bottom with the boys, and you need a backcountry permit to get down there. It's about a 5 or 6 hour hike to get down. And I kept calling very regularly because I was put on a waiting list. So about every week for 9 months, I would call and see if there was any movement, if I moved up and did I get a pass and stuff. And the same guy, the same old guy would answer virtually every time. And he got to know my voice, and he got pretty irate after a while. And he said, I told you I'd call you, stop calling here and stuff. Well, while we were in the parking area, we didn't get a backcountry permit. We never, so we had resigned ourselves to the fact that we weren't going to be able to hike down to the bottom. We just do a day hike partway down and then come back up. So before we started around 1:30, we were having our lunch in the parking area, and I saw the backcountry office, and I'm gonna go over there. So I went in. It's pretty funny. There's a younger ranger at the counter facing me, and I started like pull a string on my back. Hi, my name's Steve Farrar. I'm wondering, my name's on the waiting list and stuff. Went into the same spiel that I would do over the phone, but I was saying it live, and he didn't have a reaction, but the older guy behind him, who was facing the other way, spun around and he goes, "You!" He was the one that I had been talking to all the time. And he recognized my voice, and I thought he was going to start yelling at me. Instead, he cracked up laughing, and he said, "You are not going to believe this." He said, "We got a phone call not 15 minutes ago from a family. Their RV broke down in Flagstaff. They had one of the backcountry permits for that night, and they weren't going to be able to make it." So he said, "There's a permit available." So we got to quickly throw on our backpacks and basically run down, because we had to do a 5-hour hike in about 2.5. We went down the South Kaibog Trail and had to step aside for the mules that were coming up from the day. They had brought visitors down to Phantom Ranch earlier in the day. As amazing as it is looking at the place from up above, when you hike hour after hour down, and you think, we got to be getting to the bottom of this place. It is unbelievable. It's, geologically speaking, it's not that old a formation. It's 5 million years since when the San Andreas Fault opened up with an earthquake. It opened the avenue for the Colorado River to get out into the Gulf of California, and that let the river flow. So it's been in the makings for 5 million years. The number of ecosystems that you hike down through is all different vegetations. I say from 2,400 feet elevation down at the river up to 8,000 feet at the rim. 6,000 foot span would be like traveling from the Baja in California up to British Columbia in terms of the ecosystems that you go through. There are some critters, you got to be pretty eagle-eyed to see them, because the reason that they still exist is that they're camouflaged very, very well. So you got to be pretty sharp-eyed to pick them out. The river is still carving the canyon, so there's not a lot of side territory. As you can see, they're on the left side, the rocks come right down to the river, and they're still carving away. That's that Bright Angel Creek on the right, where there's a few campsites. This is Phantom Ranch, where you can make reservations for inside accommodations if you want. And they have a fireplace outside, a fire pit, where they have evening lectures. And the ranger that was giving the talk there that night was talking about the critters that live down in the inner canyon. And she was talking about scorpions and warning us that they like warmth. It gets cold in the canyon at night. And before you go back to your bedroll, make sure you shake out your sleeping bag, because what they'll do is that they'll crawl inside where it's warm, and then you come in and put your bare feet down into your sleeping bag. And if you get stung, that's not a good thing, because there's no medical services down at the bottom of the canyon. So she was saying, be careful. So she was basically making us afraid of scorpions. But then she says, who wants to come on a scorpion walk with me? She handed scorpions, this is what a scorpion looks like under a black light. They glow like somebody painted them. And she had handheld black lights that she handed out to us. So we start walking around. Absolutely frightening how many of the little buggers are all over the place that you don't even know about until they shine in the light. They're all over the place, which is not very comforting, but nobody got bit. So we had a short time to prepare for it. We had just thrown a few granola bars in our pack and weren't really ready for an overnight in terms of food supplies. She let us join them for breakfast here at Phantom Ranch. They have family style seating. So we're down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon having flapjacks and maple syrup and pineapple and all, as much as you can drink, coffee and orange juice and everything. It's pretty exquisite. Not exactly roughing it. We did see the morning rafters come through down on the Colorado. I had the boys go dunk their head in the river. And they said, what do we want to do that for? I said, because 99% of the people that come to the Grand Canyon never step 1 inch below the rim. If you come all the way down here, you want to prove it. So go dunk your head in the water. But what goes down then has to come up. And boy, is that one long hike. As long as it was going down, you got to step aside for the mules again, let them go by. But you just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And we had relatively heavy packs. We had our tents and our sleeping bags and everything with us for an overnight. Pretty happy when we got up to the top. And then in the afternoon, the same interplay of light as now this is an oddity. This is when the fog inverts and drops down below. So the canyon fills with fog and it's clear above it. I didn't see this. This was a National Parks picture, but of all places where you can say, I couldn't take a bad picture, doesn't matter where you are. They do have nighttime telescopes where you can set up and stargaze as well. Now, if you're going down there, outside the boundaries of the park, there's a couple places. They built a skywalk. The Palapi Indian tribe just, $30 million. They're trying to make it a destination. They're trying to put a casino there and make access for people to come pouring in. What they've done is built that horseshoe there in the middle that juts out over the canyon, and it's, what did I say? It's 1,100 feet down to the river. The vertical drop directly under the bridge is an 800-foot drop, and it's actually glass in the middle. As you can see, most people stand on the on the non-glass area. It just gives you the creep. It's solid. You can walk on it, but you can also see straight down like that. Another place that you'd have to set aside a couple days for. You got to hire an Indian guide because it's on their reservation. But to get down to the Havasupai Falls is absolutely exquisite. The coloration is suspended silt in the water from minerals that are the water is eroding, and it's just a fantastic place to, particularly if it happens to be 100 degrees in the summer, to find swimming holes like that. And just as a bonus coverage, a few non-national park places that you might want to go to. Right in the Page, Arizona is your bullet point, your bullseye right in the middle there. It's just below the Utah border into Arizona. If you go to Page, Arizona, Antelope Canyon is there. And again, this is on a reservation. You have to hire, there's our Navajo guide that Galen and I hired. to take us in here, carved by water again. Can't go there if it's raining. A lot of people died in the lower canyon actually from a flood that they didn't know, a flash flood came through. But you'll regularly see pictures of this on the cover of Sunset Highway Sunset, the Arizona magazine. It's a spectacular place for photographers. Or you can, up in the Page area, if you're very determined, you can get here. That's all solid rock. That's my brother Pete and myself, and my third brother Andy took the picture. This is a place called The Wave. It's up in the Vermilion Cliffs National Monument. Not easy to find, and they only allow 10 people a day to go there. That's the wave down at the bottom. I climbed way up into an arch up above it, but you have to hike for about 6 miles of that sandstone backcountry to find the wave. And in order to get the permit, way up in Utah, in Kanab, Utah, at the Bureau, the original BLM stands for the Bureau of Land Management. The BLM office up in Kanab, every morning they have a drawing. You can put a lottery ticket in, and if they draw your name and they draw one that has 6 people in their party, that means only 4 other people can go to the wave. 10 people a day can go there. So it's hard to get to. This is southern Utah. This is the Wild West. The photos are just unending. Just a quick ad for our next show is going to be in a few weeks, December 10th, Thursday night. We're going to go from Canada all the way down to Mexico along the spine of the Rocky Mountains, from Glacier National Park all the way down to Guadalupe Mountains at the base of Texas. These are the parks. Glacier, some of the better known parks, Yellowstone, the Tetons, the three other parks. We saw Mesa Verde in Colorado. There are 4 total. We'll go to the other 3 in Colorado, and then Carlsbad. And in August, a couple months ago, I was down to White Sands. White Sands is our newest national park. It was just upgraded from a national monument status in December to the 62nd national park. So, if anybody has any comments, questions, Jess, you got any chat questions?
We did have some questions, actually. I was just about to share a link to the next program so that people can go right to the calendar and register, or save it for later. But yeah, we had, first one was from Nancy K, actually. And she was asking, are the parks in Utah worth visiting if you're not going to go for a hike?
Yes, actually, I didn't go into it. What I did on my solo trip, I didn't go to Utah to sleep. So I would get up at 4:35 in the morning, and I'd do about a 5 or 6 hour hike to get a feel for the park, because I like getting out into the backcountry and experiencing the park. But then I'd be back down around noontime or so. I'd have some lunch and then spend the afternoon doing what I would call the Winnebago tour. They have amazing turnouts and scenic vistas that are there for a reason, and they're pretty spectacular. So no, you don't have to be a rock climber to go to them. A lot of RVs you'll see with, actually it struck me at the time. As I mentioned, I was 30 years old, and in Zion when I was there, after having climbed up to the top of East Rim in the morning, I was on that Winnebago tour in the afternoon, and I was at one of the turnouts, and I was looking up at where I had been in the morning, and the older guy beside me thought I was looking at a climber or something. He said, "What are you looking at?" I said, "Well, I was up there this morning." And he looked at me and just shook his head. He goes, "You have no idea how lucky you are to have done this when you still can," because now he was retired and he had the time and the money to go travel around. but he couldn't hike up there. He was still having one heck of a time visiting the park, though. I mean, just to stand there and soak in the magnificent scenery. I mean, it's just, like I say, you can look at all the pictures you want, but until you stand there and see it with your own eyes, it just has that much more of an impact. So by all means, I would say yes, go visit the parks.
Yeah, I was thinking about that while I was watching you talk about your hikes with your boys, and that's fantastic that they were all so into it and so active and everything. But I wondered about some for younger kids. Do you think any of those hikes would be accessible for younger kids?
Depends on your definition of young,
Yeah.
I guess. You really don't want snugglies.
Yeah.
or be pushing a carriage or
Oh, no, yeah.
But if they're young enough to, yeah, I think that was the perfect, when I brought them in 85, I wasn't married. I took them when they were in 8th grade and 10th grade, and they were old enough that they weren't whining. They could hike for a couple hours and carry their own water bottles and stuff. You could get away with a little less than that, but they were like sponges. They would sit. Each of the visitor center has maybe a 25-minute, half-hour movie that normally you could go. I've been to 13 national parks this year in 2020, and the only thing, the trails are open and the roads are open, but the visitor centers are not. So you can't go into the theaters because of the COVID restrictions. But normally you can go in, and I would very strongly suggest you do that first when you first get to a park. Go to the visitor center, and they do a very good job of showing you a movie about what is there that's special about this area that makes it deserving of national park status. So they'll have aerial views, and they'll show you different sections of the park, and it's a good basis to see, okay, I think we should spend our time up at this area or something.
And yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna, and when you went to these national parks, did you mostly camp, or did you stay in hostels or inns, or?
If I'm by myself, I like bringing my tent and going out to the backcountry, just because it's an opportunity to wallow in solitude. I mean, the quiet, the stars, if you have the ability and the gear to go out there, I prefer that. You don't have to. There are campgrounds that are you can drive to that you park right next to your campsite, so you can just take a pup tent right out of the back of your hatchback station wagon or something and camp right there. And most of them have towns, gateway towns, that aren't very far away. So there's Motel 6s or whatever. Moab in particular is a focal point for that, because both Canyonlands and Arches are right outside of the town of Moab, Utah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And then Gail wanted to know if you've ever experienced claustrophobia or fear of heights anywhere.
Not fear of heights. I'm a skydiver. I like going up to the summits and stuff. Claustrophobia, though, when I went down to White Sands in August, I spent a day in Carlsbad Caverns. We'll get to that. Oh, actually, the next one, that's in the Rocky Mountain sequence. So I'll show you some pictures of there where you don't want to go if you have claustrophobia. No, I don't like the tight spaces. 1,000 feet underground, that doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, not for me either. Amit wanted to just let you know, another awesome visual treat. Thank you so much and looking forward to the next one. Susan said, thank you so much. Love the descriptions and humor in your stories, and of course the spectacular photos. Carolyn said, we did the 5 Utah National Parks several years ago. This brought back wonderful memories, plus many more sites and information you gave us. Thank you so much. Christine K said, what is the optimum time of year to go? Is late March too early?
It's going to be cold. Mm-hmm. We were there the 3rd week in April, and Mesa Verde's at almost 9,000 feet. So we had snow. We had brought a tent and we woke up and then we were covered with snow. That was the third week in April. So they are at elevation.
Right.
We went in July, third week in July this summer to Moab, and we had 6 consecutive days of 105 degrees. So split the difference. Go in late May, early June would be optimal, I guess, or in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
The parks take on very, very different flavors depending on what season you go to them. You can go to revisit the same, not so much the desert, more like Great Smoky Mountains or something. If you go in the fall and see the foliage, it's going to be very, very different than springtime when everything's dogwoods and flowering and stuff. So don't think just because you've gone once to a park that cross it off your list. Go back a different time of year and see the same park in a very different light.
Oh, good to know. Way back, actually, I had missed this one, but Sandy asked earlier, are there any trails during the mountain bike portion? Are there any trails for novice mountain bikers? Or
Oh,
is
absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Dead flat.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly, and you don't have to be balancing right on the rim where, oops, you go over the side. They're set back and no, big fat tired. We saw a lot of retirees on big, almost tricycle bikes pedaling around. It's just a great way to casually relax and pedal, but get out into the. They have trail maps galore. There's a lot of bike shops where you can rent bikes. You don't have to bring them.
Right.
And they have great. They go from world-class single track challenge to read the Sunday paper while you're pedaling along. Very, very novice beginner trails and everything in between.
Oh, it looked so calming. Those pictures were amazing. And then finally, I think if anyone has any other questions, please submit them now. But Marie asks, any recommendations for clustering this trip into different vacations, clustering trips into different vacations, traveling from New England? What would make a good combination for a 1 to 2 week trip?
If I were doing it optimally, I would not waste bad verb choice. Don't use the word waste, but I would not want to spend the time driving. There's not a lot in the middle. That being said, we'll have one whole 90-minute talk on the central U.S. parks. So if you want to see Mammoth Cave or Hot Springs in Arkansas and stuff, there are some parks in the middle of the country. But you're asking for my opinion. I would fly to Salt Lake City and rent a car and spend your 2 weeks out there, because then once you're already out there, you didn't spend the 3 or 4 days to drive. You could combine a desert trip, which you just saw here. We flew into Vegas and took spring vacation. It was 10 days. So we had vacation week and then the 2 weekends on either end. So in 10 days, we hiked in 7 national parks. That was all, it was ambitious, a lot of driving.
Mm-hmm.
But if you only did the lower parks, the Utah parks, and then turn north, you could get up to the Grand Tetons in Wyoming, and that connects up to Yellowstone and Glacier. You'll see them next time, and remind me. I'll show you on the map. You can connect those to do a 2-week trip. I would combine Utah with going north up into Wyoming and Montana, and that gives you something in addition to Red Rock and desert.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, another great presentation on the national parks. Thank you. Thank you. Just so many thank yous coming in. Check
Good.
at the visitor center. There are hikes of all levels, easy to difficult, at each park rangers, and park rangers can advise. Thank you, Susan, for that tip. I think, Steve, you would echo that as well. And Michael says, thanks a lot. So yeah, so thank you very much, Steve, for an excellent presentation. Another really great one, very informative, lots of quality information there. So we're looking forward to the next one.
Very good.
Okay.
All
Have a
right.
great night.
See you then.
Have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much.
So long now.